Lake Turkana is shallow, but it is the world's largest permanent desert and alkaline lake in the world. The lake water comes from river inflows and all water loss in the lake comes from evaporation. The lake's basin is sparsely populated and residents of the lake lack access to potable water, causing high rates of disease prevalence in the basin. These conditions are compounded by low literacy levels and extremely high poverty levels. Fish diversity in Lake Turkana is low when compared to other African Great Lakes, but fisheries in the lake are almost entirely for subsistence purposes and therefore the fish resources in the lake are underutilized compared with other lakes. Threats to the lake include hydroelectric power and irrigation on the lake's main water source, the Omo River. This has caused habitat degradation, biodiversity loss, pollution, and tribal conflicts. Climate change, agriculture, forest clearing, and the potential development of oil resources build upon these threats. Lake Turkana National Parks are constituted of Sibiloy National Park, the South Island and the Central Island National Parks, covering a total area of 161,485 hectares located within the Lake Turkana Basin whose total surface area is 7 million ha. The lake is the most saline lake in East Africa and the largest desert lake in the world, surrounded by an arid, seemingly extraterrestrial landscape that is often devoid of life. The long body of Lake Turkana drops down along the Rift Valley from the Ethiopian border, extending 249 kilometers from north to south and 44 kilometers at its widest point with a depth of 30 meters. It is Africa's fourth largest lake, fondly called the Jade Sea because of its breathtaking color. The property represents unique geomorphological features with fossil deposits on sedimentary formations as well as 100 identified archaeological and paleontological sites. There are numerous volcanic overflows with petrified forests. The existing ecological conditions provide habitats for maintaining diverse flora and fauna. At Kobe Forad to the north of Alia Bay, extensive paleontological finds have been made, starting in 1969, with the discovery of Paranthropus boisei. The discovery of Homo habilis thereafter is evidence of the existence of a relatively intelligent hominid 2 million years ago and reflect the change in climate from moist forest grassland when the now petrified forest were growing to the present hot desert. The human and pre-human fossils include the remains of 5 species, Australopithecus anamensis, Homo habilis/rudolfensis, Paranthropus boisei, Homo erectus, and Homo sapiens all found within one locality. These discoveries are important for understanding the evolutionary history of the human species. The island parks are the breeding habitats of the Nile crocodile Crocodilus niloticus, the hippopotamus amphibius and several snake species. The lake is an important flyway passage and stopover for palearctic migrant birds. Lake Turkana, fourth largest of the eastern African lakes. It lies mainly in northern Kenya, with its northern end stretching into Ethiopia. The lake lies in the eastern arm of eastern Africa's Rift Valley. It covers an area of 2,473 square miles, 6,405 square km, and lies at 1,230 feet, 375 m, above sea level. Together with Lake Baringo, south, Lake Rudolph once formed a larger body of water drained by the Sobat River into the Nile River. Earth movements during the Pleistocene epoch, about 2,600,000 to 11,700 years ago, however, created a smaller lake of independent inland drainage. Volcanic outcrops give rise to rocky shores in the east and south, while the lake's western and northern shores are lower and consist of sand dunes, sand spits, and mudflats. The 3 main islands in the lake north, central, and south are volcanic. Lake Rudolph is 154 miles, 248 kilometers, long, only 10 to 20 miles, 16 to 32 kilometers, wide, and relatively shallow, its greatest recorded depth being 240 feet, 73 m. The lake's level and area tend to fluctuate. Its only perennial tributary is the Omo River, which flows from Ethiopia. Having no outlet, the lake's waters are brackish. Sudden storms are frequent, rendering navigation on the lake treacherous. Lake Rudolph is a rich reservoir of fish. Nile perch, tigerfish, bichir, and various species of tilapia abound. Crocodiles and hippopotamuses are common, and birds include flamingos, cormorants, and kingfishers. The peoples of the neighboring desert scrub are largely nomadic pastoralists. Count Samuel Teleki and Lieutenant Ludwig von Honel visited the lake in 1888 and named it after the Crown Prince of Austria. In Kenya it is called Lake Turkana. Lake Turkana is a lake in the Kenyan Rift Valley, in northern Kenya, with its far northern end crossing into Ethiopia. It is the world's largest permanent desert lake and the world's largest alkaline lake. By volume it is the world's fourth largest salt lake after the Caspian Sea, Issyk-Kul, and Lake Van, passing the shrinking South Aral Sea, and among all lakes it ranks 24th. Lake Turkana is now threatened by the construction of Gilgil-Gibe 3 Dam in Ethiopia due to the damming of the Omo River which supplies most of the lake's water. Although the lake commonly has been and to some degree still is used for drinking water, its salinity, slightly brackish, and very high levels of fluoride, much higher than in fluoridated water, generally make it unsuitable, and it has also been a source of diseases spread by contaminated water. Increasingly, communities on the lake's shores rely on underground springs for drinking water. The same characteristics that make it unsuitable for drinking limits its use in irrigation. The climate is hot and very dry. The rocks of the surrounding area are predominantly volcanic. Central Island is an active volcano, emitting vapor. Outcrops and rocky shores are found on the east and south shores of the lake, while dunes, spits and flats are on the west and north, at a lower elevation. Onshore and offshore winds can be extremely strong, as the lake warms and cools more slowly than the land. Sudden, violent storms are frequent. 3 rivers, the Omo, Turkwal, and Kirio, flow into the lake, but lacking outflow, its only water loss is by evaporation. Lake volume and dimensions are variable. For example, its level fell by 10 meters 33 feet between 1975 and 1993. Despite the lack of outflow, in ecology it is often regarded as a part of or at least associated with the Nile Basin because of its prehistoric connection to the system and the similarities in their aquatic faunas. Due to temperature, its surface water typically is 27 to 31 degrees Celsius 81 to 88 degrees Fahrenheit and the mean air temperature of the region generally is similar or slightly higher. Aridity and geographic inaccessibility, the lake retains its wild character. 6 Nile crocodiles are found in great abundance on the flats. The rocky shores are home to scorpions and carpet vipers. The lake is rich in fish and fishing is very important to the local economy, but this is threatened by falling water levels and overfishing. Lake Turkana National Parks are now listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Sibeloy National Park lies on the lake's eastern shore, while Central Island National Park and South Island National Park lie in the lake. Both are known for their Nile crocodiles. An abundance of hominid fossils have been discovered in the area surrounding Lake Turkana. The area still sees few visitors, being 2 days' drive from Nairobi. The lake is also an imaginary boundary of the Rend Isle and Borana and Oromo to the Turkana land. The area is primarily clay-based and is more alkaline than seawater. The lake was originally named Lake Rudolph, in honor of Crown Prince Rudolph of Austria, by Count Samuel Teleki Dezek and his second-in-command Lieutenant Ludwig Ritter von Honel, a Hungarian and an Austrian, on March 6, 1888. They were the first Europeans to have recorded visiting the lake after a long safari across East Africa. The lake kept its European name during the colonial period of British East Africa. However, the existence of the lake and its shape and location were well known in Europe long before Teleki conceived of his visit. The Lake Turkana Wind Power Consortium, LTWP, plans to provide 310 MW of power to Kenya's national electricity grid by tapping the unique wind conditions around the lake. The plan calls for 365 wind turbines, each with a nameplate capacity of 850 kilowatts. As of October 2016, 155 turbines had been installed with completion expected in 2017. It will be the largest wind power project in Africa. The Jibe 3 dam is already under construction by Ethiopia along its Omo River, with general recognition that it will cause a major decrease in river flow downstream and a serious reduction of inflow to Kenya's Lake Turkana, which receives 90% of its waters from the river. According to the ARWG report, these changes will destroy the survival means of at least 200,000 pastoralists, flood-dependent agriculturalists, and fishers along the Omo River. 300,000 pastoralists and fishers around the shores of Lake Turkana, plunging the region's ethnic groups into cross-border violent conflict reaching well into South Sudan, as starvation confronts all of them. The report offers a devastating look at a deeply flawed development process fueled by the special interests of global finance and African governments. In the process, it identifies major overlooked or otherwise minimized risks, not the least of which is a U.S. Geological Survey estimation of a high risk for a magnitude 7 or 8 earthquake in the Jibe 3 dam region. The magnitude of the impact that the dam and possible irrigation projects induced by the dam will have on the water level of Lake Turkana is controversial. A hydrological study conducted for the African Development Bank in November 2010 concluded that the filling of the dam will reduce the lake's water level by 2 meters, if no irrigation will be undertaken. Irrigation would cause a further drop in the lake level. Friends of Lake Turkana, a Kenyan organization representing indigenous groups in northwestern Kenya whose livelihoods are linked to Lake Turkana, had previously estimated that the dam could reduce the level of Lake Turkana by up to 10 meters, affecting up to 300,000 people. 30. This could cause the brackish water to increase in salinity to where it may no longer be drinkable by the indigenous groups around the lake. Currently, the salinity of the water is about 2332 mg/L, and it is estimated that a 10-meter decrease in the water level of Lake Turkana could cause the salinity to rise to 3397 mg/L. Raising salinity could also drastically reduce the number of fish in the lake, which the people around Lake Turkana depend on for sustenance and their livelihoods. According to critics, this will condemn the lake to a not-so-slow death. According to dam proponents, the impact on Lake Turkana will be limited to the temporary reduction in flows during the filling of the reservoir. Various sources state that the filling could take between 1 and 3 wet seasons. The total storage volume of the reservoir of Jibe 3 dam will be between 11.75 and 14 billion cubic meter, depending on sources. According to the firm that builds the dam, this would reduce the water level in the lake by less than 50 centimeters per year for 3 years, and that salinity will not change in any way. According to the International Lake Environment Committee, 90% of Lake Turkana's water is delivered by the Omo River on which the dam would be built. With no outlet, Lake Turkana loses 2.3 meters of water every year to evaporation, and its level is sensitive to climatic and seasonal fluctuations. For purposes of comparison, the historic level of Lake Turkana declined from a high of 20 m above today's level in the 1890s to the same level as today in the 1940s and 1950s. Then it increased again gradually by 7 meters to reach a peak around 1980, and subsequently decreased again. The Environmental and Social Impact Assessment, ESIA, summary of the project did not assess the impact of the dam on the water level and water quality of Lake Turkana. The director of Kenya's Water Services Regulatory Board, John Naoro, argued that the dam would have no negative impact on Lake Turkana. A Kenya government report in 2021 estimated that the surface area of Lake Turkana had increased by 10% between 2010 and 2020. Thank you for watching this video.